Okay, hi. Welcome to another podcast. Today, where we got a an interesting one for everybody today is a panel podcast. I'm gonna challenge myself to have like a group of people all on one program today, and since this month commemorates the founding of the national park system, I wanted to have a conversation about hiking, going out to national parks and like outdoor spaces and um I did think about it being like a little break from some heavy subjects, but we could never escape it, as Augustine mentioned earlier in right before the program. But I hope y'all enjoy. And I want to introduce our guests, Eddie Flores and Agustin Herrera from Chicano. What was it again? Sorry, I already forgot. Chicano.
Chicano Vision's hiking crew.
Chicano Chicano Visions hiking crew. Get that
Yes.
get that Instagram, get all of that going. But
No
and
no online presence as of yet, but we're too busy fucking hiking, man.
yeah. So I just kind of wanted to start. So have y'all been going out a lot since the start of this pandemic, and um have have y'all been taking trips now that there's more time to do outdoor stuff, if that's the case?
I think Agustine's been going out a little bit more than me. You want to take this one, Agustin?
Yeah, I think that for the first weeks that that everything got announced and everything got shut down.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what was interesting to me is that like what I saw was that there was a lot more people going to those spaces
Mm-hmm.
than before.
Right.
So I think that I myself kind of avoided that. And kind of like because you don't know kind of with the situations that we're in if it was a safe place to go or
Mm-hmm.
not that much information was really out there, so I kind of took a step back and kind of wasn't going
Mm-hmm.
until later down the line when like they closed a lot of the trails here in LA, and then they opened up again, that I kind of like sort of started going a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
but kind of with a lot of caution. I mean, that I kind of was going with, wearing a mask and being safe about it, and trying to keep your distance. But it's hard to keep your distance when you have a trail that's kind of like gets shorter in a certain ways. It's kind of hard to keep your distance from people. But definitely been going a little more now, I think, in
Mm-hmm.
these last couple of months, in this last month.
Yeah, I've been noticing that like some trails and some places in like the LA County that are like using reservation style ways to get people to like not crowd up in these popular spots. Like I think Eaton Canyon, you have to reserve like weeks in advance to just go, and then like there's the Chantry Flats area in the San Gabriel Mountains where they cap visitation at like 200 people at a time. So I'm not sure how they're doing that, but like I just know that that's happening right now in some of these popular areas. Um, have any of y'all went to anywhere else besides the LA area? I thought I saw that you went um, somewhere in Mexico. Was that on your Facebook, Augustine?
Yeah, it was a improv camping trip with the family.
Mm-hmm.
And they decided to rent this place out there in Ensenada.
Mm-hmm.
It was called Rancho San Carlos. It's a beautiful place, but however, I
Mm-hmm.
think that that place kind of like it promised that it was going to be like 50% capacity,
Mm-hmm.
and people made a reservation, but they let everybody in because people are just trying to make a living and trying to make money off of like just people going into that place.
Right.
So it
Right.
was very packed and it was very scary. Like they have
Mm-hmm.
like these like these hot springs that are is like a natural hot spring in the area,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a very popular spot for a lot of people that are more local in the area. But it was like too many people in that area.
Mm-hmm.
So like they had like a camping place which was very nice because you could camp there for like like a couple of days, and it's like very nice if you go like Monday through Wednesday. But outside of that, like I ended up kind of adventuring out and following this little trail.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very nice. It kind of reminded me of how there's a lot of places that are unkept in that way. That there's probably a lot of trails that have a lot of indigenous people have walked for like many of years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this felt like this felt like a trail that was like that, that was paved just like that in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it was nice, but it was also at the same time, I got kind of a little I got a little scared going by myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just like, if I get hurt out here, nobody gonna come. Ain't no ranger gonna come help you out here. You know, you're kind
Yeah.
of on you're kind of on your own in that sense. But but I think it was a very nice place. It kind of made me curious more to explore that area of the world, like more of Baja California,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing kind of like what's out there in that area, because it's very beautiful. You wouldn't think that there's like lobsters running around in fresh water. You
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't you wouldn't think that all these like different type of snakes, or these little holes that you could these little like natural holes that you could find.
Mm-hmm.
So I found it like very nice, and it was a very nice view, but it definitely had like a different spirit to it than other places I've been to before.
Uh, that's pretty awesome. And I've been so hyper focused with like LA area and like the US as like hiking spots. It's like I never really like I haven't really brought in my sense out in other places other than like the places I've been, like Las Vegas, the LA area, to some degree Japan. Last year when I went there, I was like, oh, there's like a whole culture of hiking. But that being said, this is a question for both of y'all. What got you initially into hiking, given that your background, both of y'all were born and raised in the downtown LA area, right? And specifically in which areas?
No, I was born and raised in the San Fernando Valley,
Oh, the San Fernando Valley.
northeast San Fernando Valley. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. And then, what got y'all into um
hiking,
hiking
camping.
in the first place? Hiking and camping.
Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, my parents would take me to like Yosemite, places like that. Not every year, but a handful of times that I kind of like liked going. Right,
Mm-hmm.
it was just car camping. It was never backpacking or really hiking. But
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't, I think, until maybe, yeah, probably after college where I kind of got into it more. But definitely in the last 5, 6 years, it became something more that I wanted to do, especially the backpacking part. You know,
Right.
like trying to do like a backpacking trip. That was kind of the goal for the last 3 years.
Augustine.
I think for me, it kind of had to be like in high school, I did this program called Ciclo de Hombres, and this program kind of took a lot of young men from our community, from the high school I was in. It took us out to like this like native land out there in San Diego,
Oh,
and it
okay.
was
Yeah.
so we went out there, and I think that was like the first time I ever experienced like a sweat lodge in that area. But I think to me, going out there in that sense kind of like made me have more of a passion for kind of like going out there and like hiking and
Mm-hmm.
going to these spaces that you don't have the city around you,
Mm-hmm.
like all the different, like seeing the stars in that way. Kind of got me more into it. And I think it wasn't until like the backpacking aspect of like kind of like going or hiking. For me, I got more into it like in the last kind of like 5 6 years as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think that one of the interesting things is that like with Eddie here, one of our first Chicano Visions trips is that we took our first backpacking trip with no experience. We just kind of
Yeah.
backpacked through Mexico, and it was really nice about that trip is that we got to see city pyramids, and see all these different parts of Mexico. We went from like Guadalajara at one point, and we ended up in Cancun, and we had like 30 days to kind of like do that trip. So to me, that was kind of like one of the first experiences where I had like, just living off of my backpack. That was kind of like an interesting experience in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But the backpack I had was definitely not like the one I have now.
I don't think I ever heard the story where you backpack through Mexico.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it was more like travel backpacking,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, because me and Agustin have traveled a lot together, and
Mm-hmm.
there's always kind of been like a love of just like traveling and exploring new cities, right? Um, but I think like it was really what, like last year or 2 years ago, where we
Mm-hmm.
did Ray Lakes. I mean, we did Ray Lakes, and we did part of the PCT in the LA forest, right? Where we were really just kind of like on our own, like really like carry our own food, our own water, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it definitely, the first Chicano Visions trip was that like Mexico trip, right? Like going through Oaxaca, going through like pretty much all of like central and southern Mexico. That was should have kept it going right there, but you know.
Do you feel like there's any difference backpacking through like the U.S. versus backpacking in Mexico?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, because I think you know, the U.S. has like a really developed national park system, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
like trails, right? And like I mean, Mexico and like other countries, that's just more like rugged, you
Mm-hmm.
know, like you're like, I mean, they have park systems, they have national parks, right? But I wouldn't say they're probably at the level of the U.S. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like the U.S. has like a whole history. What right? Who started it? Was it Roosevelt that started the national park system?
I'm trying to figure out that PBS documentary. Yeah, I think it was.
I think it was Roosevelt. Yeah,
Yeah.
after the New Deal, right, to kind of create jobs, right? So they
Mm-hmm.
developed the trails and they maintained all those trails, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I've never done like a backpacking trip through like the wilderness in Mexico, like you know, like like to follow a trail.
Mm-hmm.
You know what's interesting about that is that like that part of the PCT, I feel like I was kind of like looking at this hike recently that started in Ensenada and ends up kind of like in the Mexicali area.
Mm-hmm.
But I think to me that's kind of like where the um it's kind of interesting. I think it connects to the PCT. I think the PCT goes down south, you know, in some areas.
Like all the way
But
through Cabo, San Lucas, and all that.
that
Mm-hmm.
might be interesting. I think there's a possibility because I seen somebody that posted up a hike that was kind of, but it doesn't look like a lot of people really travel it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know what you might find in that area, you know.
Yeah.
So, but it's always gonna be a risk with you know, the situation just in that area of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. For those who don't know, the PCT is the Pacific. Wait,
Crest
PCT
Trail. Yeah.
Pacific Crest Trail. It's a trail that, um, for the U.S. side of things, it starts from Calexico all the way up to the border of Canada, and you're going through deserts, mountains, and like basically rainforests out in Portland and Seattle. For those who trying to figure out what we're talking about.
I think it's
So
like 2,400 miles too.
yeah,
Like,
2,400 miles,
yeah.
and that trail extends out through Baja in into Mexico.
I'm just guessing, you
You
know,
already
throwing
guessed
a
it.
guess
Yeah.
out there that it might, you know,
Mm-hmm.
just because I found a trail that really went from Ensenada actually all the way up that way to Mexicali. So
Mm-hmm.
Mexicali connects to Calexico at the border. So to me, it might be interesting to see if there's a way that connected.
Yeah.
Is there big loops like that? Like maybe 50-mile loops in Mexico, like in Oaxaca, Agustin? Do you know?
I
Like,
don't know, but I believe there probably is, you know, because but one thing I seen recently is that like I started seeing more I went on YouTube and I was just like hikes in Tijuana.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that there's some like a lot of more people that are doing like videos, right? They're kind of like going out there and filming like El Cerro Colorado in Tijuana. It has like a really good view of Tijuana, of the whole city, but it's kind of like you got to make your own trail to go up. You know, it's not like it's like
Right.
there's one trail that's paved up, but in a sense, when you go up there, right, you know, there's like a elotero person up there selling corn. You
oh, that's
have
dope.
like, yeah, yeah,
That sounds
yeah,
awesome,
That's my
actually.
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
That's what
yeah,
my dad. Yeah, when I told my dad about the trip we did, Great Lakes, he's like, "Oh, we gotta go set up a store right there. We could be selling like all this stuff. You know, we selling beers right there. You could be making money." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that'd be cool, but I don't know if you're gonna get the permits like that."
Yeah, and
But
it
Mexico, that's dope. You could hike like 30 miles and there's that lotero right there. Someone selling sodas and shit.
and some beers.
That's dope. Yeah.
That sounds like a great way to end a hike. Just getting plastered at the top of a mountain. Um. So that being said, of like the origins of everybody's hiking, like kind of that wanderlust and going into nature areas. Something that I didn't mention at the start of this podcast is that we're actually former coworkers, and we generally work in different schools. And I was wondering, with the backgrounds that we've had, have you ever noticed there was any ways to get students out into these green spaces, like hiking spots, and like programs that you've seen in the high schools that we used to work at?
Well, I mean, we did that one trip to Quaking Aspen and Sequoia.
Hmm.
Did you go on that trip, Brian?
I don't think so. I don't.
Oh,
I don't remember. I don't remember going to Sequoia. I would have remembered going to the Sequoias.
yeah. I mean, well, I mean, there's that trip, but then there's another program, and I think it's sponsored by the National Park Service too. And they were in Franklin High School,
Hmm.
and they would equip the students with all the gear, like all the clothes, the backpack, right? And they would go out like on 3 4 day backpacking trips. So I know there's programs that exist.
Yeah.
And then my a friend of mine, actually through Augustin's recommendation, there's this program, I forget the name of it, but he's about your age too, Brian, and he did this program, and I think it was um, more like, trying to understand like your relationship with the land, right? There was a lot of
Hmm.
like indigenous epistemology, right? They would take him to different parts, right? And they would meet like different like, elders, and they would talk to them about um, just about, like hiking, right? And just like learning how to um, I guess, take care of the land pretty much, right? Being a steward of the land. Do you
Hmm.
remember the name of the program, Ago?
I don't remember the name of the program necessarily, but I know through that program they have done like taking in young people
Hmm.
of color from from the hood to like those spaces. I know this is very
And
intentional that they've done that.
and I think you get certified too to be like a guide.
Hmm.
Yeah. So you get certified to be a guide, and you get certified to like kind of teach other people like wilderness skills.
Yeah. The reason why I brought this up, because like in the school that I currently still operate, um the center I work out of, like I've noticed that there's no emphasis on you know um advocating to get students into green spaces, or talking about getting people in the community out there. And part of the thought process that I had is that, like, I think there's kind of like a devaluing of these green spaces within like immigrant communities. And I never went hiking at least until fourth grade, and then it wasn't something that my family ever valued as something as important, or to take a break. We always had to hustle, we always had to work. And so that's where that question was coming from, is that you know I feel that there right now there a lot of families don't feel like they have a need to go out to these spaces. Do y'all feel the same way?
I mean,
Go
I would
ahead.
say, yeah, I would just say definitely the mountains are, it's very white, that's like a
Mm-hmm.
issue in the hiking, backpacking, world. They are white, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's kind of like there's like a shift now, right, where like people are I mean, we say we're like, for us, like Chicano Visions is like the idea of decolonizing the mountains is like to go there, right, and to kind of like hold that space, because like, I mean, if you think about it historically, right, like all the trails, like especially around here, like in Malibu or whatever, that you go there, those are some of those are like 6,000, 7,000-year-old trails, right, that like, indigenous folks like created, right, for like hunting, I'm sure, for pleasure, hiking or whatever too, but there were like trails made out of necessity. But like slowly, right, like people were like pushed out of
Mm-hmm.
land, right, like to access some of these spaces too, to have the time for a vacation and to access these spaces. And some this gear is expensive too, so I think it puts a lot of people off to hiking, right? But there's this really good book called The Adventure Gap. It kind of
Mm-hmm.
focuses more on like the history of African Americans, right? And like the like black folks that did like first ascents, right? Or that I think the first person to um, I think one of the I think it was I think it was a black man that actually did the first ascent to like Denali or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a history of like people of color doing these things, and definitely in the U.S., like um, we had like knowledge, right, on like obviously how to like hunt and survive, right, and know we learned how to like use the land, right, but like that has been kind of like taken away, right, like through through generations, right, and then I think there might be a perception too, maybe with a lot of people of color, that hiking or this kind of sports is like a white person thing, right, you know but I think that's changing.
You
But I
know,
think, yeah, I was just gonna say is because I think as people aren't exposed to that, but when they are exposed to it, they kind of see the beauty and they see the healing properties of what being in nature can do.
Yeah, and also kind of like that the history, and I think you mentioned something earlier with um the U.S. National Park system, that like these areas were occupied by indigenous communities, and I think the biggest example is Yosemite. There was a group of
Yeah,
indigenous communities that lived in that valley, um, you know, um, like lived, work, eat, and had a community. And then when the rules of the national park system came in, you know, they had to evict all those people, that
yeah, and
lived
I
in that
think
land.
recently, like I think recently the people, like the indigenous people from like the Big Sur area, they've been fighting for that land for like 200, for recognition of the land for like 250 years, and I think maybe
mhm.
like 2 3 weeks ago they got some of their land back, right?
Hmm.
So I mean, things are definitely changing.
You were saying, Augustine? I feel like
No,
you're gonna give a point there.
nah, it kind of feels like I think the what's interesting about it is like I think sometimes when you're in your own city, right, you don't take advantage of the things that are really close to you
Hmm.
for different reasons, right? I think that one of them is very economical, right? It's like very like for some folks to travel to certain spaces, it just takes a lot of resources to get there, right? And a lot of folks in our communities just don't have those resources, right, to like venture out and do these things, right? Which is kind of like recognizing that element of it, right?
Hmm.
And also recognizing that like yeah, sometimes when you're in your city and that in like in LA, there's some people that are from our communities that never been to the beach, right? Or that
Hmm.
have
Yeah.
never gone up to the mountains or never been to the snow, right? Being that we have snow here in LA, just like if you take an hour drive in the winter, you could find snow, but there's a lot of people that haven't experienced these elements, right? And there's something about that, right? There's also something about like being like be kind of having a staycation in your old city or investing in those things. But recently, I think I've seen more like for example up here in Buckhorn in Angeles Crest Forest, like I've camped there a couple of times or one time. But I seen a lot of Raza families out there, and I was like, oh, that's cool. They had it all set up, they had their thing, they were enjoying it, right? But I think to me, it's more about like more kind of when you see that, it's more like cool, like people are kind of knowing these spaces, but it's more like kind of like seeing these spaces more now, taking advantage of these spaces. And I
Hmm.
think now with this with the situation that we're in right now with this pandemic, like even here in Kenneth Park, right? Like I just live kind of like 5 minutes away from here, but I seen a lot more like people of color out there, right? The park's a lot more packed. There's a lot more
Hmm.
people out there kind of using it, kind of hiking, kind of like running around, doing these things. So I don't know. It's kind of like an interesting question, right? Because it's like one, it's like do people have the resources to go, and also two, are people taking advantage of what's in their own cities? And I think now that the situation is where you can't really go out to a lot of places, I think a lot more people, a lot more families are taking advantage of these places. Like for
Hmm.
example, I seen like one family, um, it was like a Raza family, and they were biking, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like they had, they might not have like the expensive mountain bikes and all of that, but they're doing it.
Hmm.
Which I'm like, that's cool to see, right? That people are kind of going out there and enjoying that. And it reminds me just a lot of like these things, right? Like these hobbies are not cheap either, right? Going to Eddie's point, they're not cheap either. Like when if you see like I'm in climbing for the first time, which is kind of related to this hiking thing, climbing for the first time. And yeah, you see a lot of like Asian folks, a lot of like white folks, right? But you didn't see a lot of more other people of color in these spaces, you know. But to me, it's like if people get exposed to it, I think people will love it, you know, just go out
Yeah.
there and check out these spaces. But it's a matter of creating those opportunities for that to happen.
Yeah, and I think I mean, yeah, definitely now with like the quarantine, camping is kind of one of the few things you can do. Like I'm gonna go Thursday morning, I'm gonna go to Chilao. And I wanted to find I went a Big Five, I went to Target. I was looking for the 1 pound propane tanks, the Coleman ones.
Mm-hmm.
All the camping stuff sold out. uh, all those little things that you need to go out for the weekend is like sold out. That might be, I'm sure it's a factor of it being summer, but it's definitely like COVID, because you can't really go anywhere except camp, and it's kind of like you could go and you could still be around people, but you're at a distance still.
Yeah, I think ultimately at the end, given the COVID talks, it's like more families are aware that even what you brought up earlier, it's like in your city, where are the green spaces? Where can we travel to that's close by that we can decompress in within nature, and I know this sounds a little bit hokey, but like every time I feel like I go hiking, I feel like I kind of like rejuvenate myself in a weird way, and like all that kind of funk of like dealing with urban lifestyle and all of that, it's like I'm not roughing it like Bear Grylls or anything, but it's just a way to kind of get stress out of your mind, and in communities that I feel we serve, like I don't think many people see that as an option, you know.
Yeah, and I think you see that just in like the city parks too. I mean, there's a lot of people of color because a lot of folks live like in apartment buildings, and
Hmm.
they don't have their backyards, right? Like that's kind of like right now you see the privilege of people that live in homes with backyards, and they could be in their backyard and get some outside time. But
Hmm.
if you're living in an apartment, you got to go to these parks, right? And then if too many people show up at the park, they'll like shut it down,
Hmm.
So it's kind of like a catch-22 for them.
So yeah, sorry, I, just, my
Yeah,
mind just
no,
kind of got
there needs to
blocked. I'm
be.
just like
Yeah,
thinking about
no,
it. Yeah.
yeah. There just needs. There's not. I mean, there is not a equitable amount of green space in like communities of color. In relation to like white communities or upper class communities.
You know, and that's kind of like it's interesting though because even you could like physically see that, right? Like when you
Hmm.
walk in certain communities, it's like physically visible. Like I remember one time, like a couple years ago, I was like, you know what? Like I want to go to the Hollywood hike, yeah, Hollywood Hill sign, right? Go see the sign up there and hike up there. And when I was hiking up there, I didn't realize that there was a reservoir up there, and I was just like, oh man, all this time I had no idea that there was a
Hmm.
reservoir up there, water right there, right? And it looks beautiful. It's like, oh damn, I never seen that. So I hiked that and actually thought on that for the first time, and then I think the second time somebody had told me about like physically how in certain communities, right, you can see how many trees are planted.
Oh yeah.
And then when I went up there, I went up there with those eyes, and I was like, well, let me see. So the view you have up there, right, you kind of see like Central LA, which is kind of like Central LA is like a rich area, right? But there's a lot of trees there, and you could visibly see how like it is green, and then all around it is just like apartments, complexes, and it's not as green. So it's interesting to see that, right? That like even physically in our communities, you can visibly see those things, right? And what's interesting now is like now they're investing in green spaces in our communities, right? Like for example, here in South Central, they were trying to have like they're trying to build like a light rail, right, that ran around Slauson,
Hmm.
and but the community I think voted that to be like a park, so they're going to create like a green space there. But now with the process of gentrification, right? Who's really going to benefit from that space?
Yeah. Yeah. The I think that's a big question when gentrification kind of gets into that. Like who benefits through these green spaces with if development. And I've had a conversation about on a podcast. It's like, does development equal gentrification? And what he was saying I think communities that want improvement shouldn't be afraid of it, but at the same time, it's like sometimes it can also invite, people that have I feel like a higher standard, or want certain things out of a space. Do I don't know if y'all feel the same way, because I feel like I've noticed it a little bit, in areas where, like Pasadena, where there's like it feels like it's a walled garden every time I feel go to the Eaton Canyon,
Oh yeah.
especially now.
I mean, Pasadena prides itself for like, what is it, the city with the most trees or whatever. And
Hmm.
kind of also going to like Agustine's point about the trees, there was like a study that came out that said like you could measure um, the economic level of a neighborhood by how many trees they have, you know? You see that, like, yeah, you see that, like, distinctly, like, in South Central, like, there's hardly any trees. There's hardly any green space, but you go to, like, yeah, you go to Pasadena, right? Or any good neighborhood has, like, a bunch of trees, and that changes, like, the whole vibe. Those trees could, like, pick up your property values, you know?
Hmm.
But I don't know why that is. Maybe it costs the city more to maintain those trees in poor neighborhoods.
Hmm.
But I think that's a good question to kind of find an answer to.
That being said, what would be the solution to that issue? Like, should it be taken up by the city, or should there be more education in schools that need students to be out there, or in these green spaces?
You you know what it reminds me of just like here, like just because we're talking about South Central, it reminds me of the South Central Farm. Like I wasn't around here in LA, kind of like when that was kind of like a big present thing here in the community.
Hmm.
But I seen like there's been like there's a documentary out on it if people want to check it out, right? That talks about that space. But to me, it's more like, yeah, the community kind of took that in their own hands and created their own green space, right? Like they plant, and it was interesting that you could see that space up from, like, if you go in a plane, you could have
Hmm.
seen that space down in LA, and you could have seen how people had like the square mileage, and everybody was planting trees, everybody was planting different vegetables and different greens. And to me, it's kind of like, yeah, we could like go to those spaces and put it on them, but I think for me, it's more like the solutions got to come from us, right? Because I think that
Hmm.
something that you mentioned was like when you go out to like these spaces, right, that you come back rejuvenated, right? That you feel a certain way, you feel kind of like enlightened, you feel like more at peace, you feel more centered, you feel like like you just took a breath of fresh air, and you're just gonna have to come back into like a certain place or certain wavelength, right? You're able to disconnect from everything. Um, and to me, that's kind of important what you're mentioning, though, right? Because I think to me, like Chicano visions, right, like that philosophy of it is really kind of like, in some ways, it's kind of sort of a part of that, right?
Hmm.
But it's also being critical of like the world that we're in, right? And I think being up in those spaces allows one to be critical and come back and fight a good fight in our communities to try to create try to plant the seeds to create a different world in our communities, right? Like to plant a tree in our community, right, and see it grow. It's a beautiful thing, you know what I'm saying, where we kind of go in there and try to create the solutions ourselves, you know?
But
Yeah.
yeah, um, but you know who the biggest institution that has like the most concrete, that covers the most, that kind of cuts these trees down and paves it with concrete is?
What is it, Eddie?
It's LAU. It's LAUSD.
LAUSD, really?
LAUSD created a concrete jungle throughout
Hmm.
LA, and especially like schools like in the hood, right? Is all like blacktop. You know, there ain't
Hmm.
no trees right there. Like, remember being at school in the summer, right? And you see like the waves coming off the concrete and shit.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
remember that.
like, what's up with that? Like, you can't put no trees here. You can't put no like grass, right, for kids to play in.
Yeah, that seems like an oversight. It doesn't seem like a school to me. It seems like an institution almost.
Yeah, they own they paved most of LA. So those actually like well, Lee was actually she was going to those meetings like before I met her, but she was telling me there was kind of like this campaign to get LAUSD to remove the concrete from their schools.
Hmm.
Because that concrete, right, it absorbs a lot of the heat.
Hmm.
So that kind of contributes to like LA being so hot, right? and it also kind of like if you think about like the
Mm.
LA River too, right?
Yeah.
Like that water, like the watershed in
Mm.
LA, it kind of just washes off, right? It doesn't go back into the aquifer of
Mm.
LA, so it doesn't filter none of that water.
Yeah.
So like
Mm.
the more concrete we can remove in the city, the better it is for like the whole ecosystem,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm.
the nicer it'll look too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
and these schools will probably more than likely look less like
prisons.
yeah, let's just say it.
Yeah,
It less look like prisons and more look
yeah.
like actual buildings in our
Make
communities.
make it
Yeah,
look
make
like
it
a
look
little
like a
college
school.
campus, a little
Yeah.
college campus. You know,
Mm.
we got a little
and
tree.
and I feel like Augustine, like you brought up a good point of, you know, going out to these spaces, and I feel um if more folks are out there, you know, they come back and have this positive feeling, like I think that would be more people to advocate for, to build it in the communities they live in, you know, or those programs to help families to be out there. And or am I just being too optimistic? Because there's also that too.
I think that for me, it gotta be like a holistic thing, right?
Right.
Like for example, like when we had like I just think about this, like the first year that we kind of launched this like transformative justice program at Wilson High, right? It
Mm-hmm.
would have been interesting to see, like at the end of it, like the culminating project to take some of our young people out where they gotta like, build a tent, where they gotta like learn how to do a fire, even learn how to filter your water, right, from like a river source, like there's these little things, right, that kind of like we're disconnected from because of our everyday lives and the way this capitalist system kind of demands us to kind of like live in a certain way, right?
Right.
Um, so to me, it would be interesting to kind of like have like that as part of our programming, right, in our spaces, right, in our spaces. So it got to be like a holistic thing. I don't think it gotta come as part of a thing, right? Because like even like now, like we seen like in the last couple of months, like that there was like a lot of videos that were coming out. Oh look, like this certain mountain lion is coming down, this bear is coming down to these spaces, right? So you've seen how like the earth is going to heal itself, right? If we were humans running around, the earth is just going to heal itself, right? And we've had to see examples of that. I remember like that was part of the first thing that I was seeing a lot of messaging around that. Oh look, this bird came about. I haven't seen this bird in a while. And it's interesting, right? Because now you don't hear that, right? You don't really hear that no more, like of all these like different elements that were coming about when it was kind of like really like on lockdown here in LA.
Yeah.
But to me, it would be like it gotta really be kind of like a holistic thing, though, right? Because I think they gotta be like, yeah, we gotta look at their environment. We gotta look at like the systemic issues that are kind of happening in our communities, where a lot of our people's getting like, what I'm saying, really getting mistreated by the system. There's like the police brutality, the a lot of like the machismo in our communities. So it gotta be like a holistic thing that we kind of work on together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if not, like I don't think we could. I think here in LA we're so used to working on things so it's so fragmented that people that are in the immigration lane stay in the immigration lane, people that are in the school to prison pipeline lane stay in the school to prison pipeline lane, people that do work around environmental justice work stay in their environmental justice work, people that do work around labor rights staying in the labor rights. So it's kind of like there got to be a way to more to expand that, right, and to
Mm-hmm.
really find ways to kind of like just to advocate for like a different world, right? It just
Yeah.
can't be just be like one issue thing.
It's kind of like it's an interconnected thing that all of that encompass you know, the issues that we face living in the city, almost, you know, and living in this kind of urban environment. Yeah. So I don't know if I'm trying to get too much away from this heavy conversation, but y'all mentioned that you did one of your first backpacking trips in LA, right? And I think I remember you had interesting conversation about or an interesting story where you felt like you didn't know a lot of people of color going on this trail, and it was kind of an experience. And when you saw people that kind of within your same community, you were like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're here! I can't believe you're backpacking."
We've had moments like that. We're like,
Yeah.
oh wow, it's like seeing a bear almost. Like, oh yeah, I don't know, the brown person. Damn.
That was funny.
Do you want to talk about that trip a little bit? I don't know if you mentioned it early in the beginning of this program.
The 27-mile trip.
Yeah.
Oh
We
yeah.
did
Uh-huh. Yeah, what you were gonna say? Like, what? Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say that I think that like thanks to Eddie here, like he kind of instigated that, right? And we kind of like started getting that interest more going where in that passion.
Hmm.
Um and I think that from it was a lot of work, though I didn't even go, that was a lot of work, right? To kind of just get ready to like do that trip, right? It's a lot of work. It was a lot some research we had to spend on it, right?
Hmm.
Um but at the end of it, I think that like the training was I think was really like was really empowering, this that training, right? That the training that we did to get to the point just to go on this team. I
Hmm.
think that was like a really beautiful process.
Yeah, I think we started too, just kind of doing day trips. Oh, and I think what really started it was when I think for my one of my birthdays, like me, Agustin, and like some other friends, we drove to Utah. We
Hmm.
drove to Arches National Park and Canyonlands. We were there for what, 3, 4 days? I don't know. But that trip, we were like, damn, nature is so beautiful. Like, I just want to, I want to spend more time here. I want to get to know her more,
Hmm.
Um, so I think that kind of like, for me, really like, really made me want to like at least backpack, not just car camp.
Hmm.
But then I think when we came back, then we would do kind of like just day trips, and we would find spots like in Joshua Tree, right? And then Little Jimmy, like day trips up to like Little Jimmy, right? And just kind of start slowly backpacking like that. 3 miles up there, but taking all your gear, right? And then seeing like what you use, what you don't use, and then um, just to prepare for like Ray Lakes. Um, it was just kind of weekend trips, either by myself or we would go together with friends. And at first we had like 5 people that were down to go, and then there was 4, then 3, then and then there were 2. So
Like
um,
like most trips.
yeah, like most trips, right? Um, but I think the 27-mile one in LA that kicked our butts, man. That shit was like, I guess maybe with the heat, and we didn't know where we were gonna get water from because we weren't, you're
Oh
not on
yeah.
the river right there. Some trails, some hikes are easy because you're by a water source the whole time. But right there, we
Hmm.
had to carry our own water, but it was just hot in LA, and yeah, there was moments where we're like walking with the bag and we fucking just threw them down, and we're like, are we there yet? Are we there yet to the camp? And you're walking and walking, and you like never get there. You never get there. And after that, I'm like, I ain't taking this. I ain't taking this. I'm
Yeah.
travel light, man. But when we got to Sequoia,
Hmm.
your body just adapts. The first day was hard because of altitude sickness, but then I think we did like once we got the rhythm,
Hmm.
we're like unstoppable.
So what would you tell folks to if it's like their first time, if they are considering hiking or doing these things as a sport? Sorry, were you
Well,
gonna say something, Augustine? Sorry.
no, yeah, it's because yeah, that story though of when we saw these other Mexican brothers that were
Yeah.
also hiking this the hike, right, that we did was funny because
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we went in there and your body adapted like physically, right? But mentally, you were kind of like, man, like really reflective because you weren't seeing a lot of like, a lot of Chicanos, a lot of Chicanas. You weren't seeing a lot of like black folks on the trails. You know what I'm saying? You were seeing like, we saw literally like a lot. I mean, we met, talked to some good white folks, right? We saw some like Asian folks on the trail, right?
Hmm.
And I think that we hadn't seen anybody else, or, and I think that it was after like after our third day into the trip, where I was talking to Eddie and we were coming down. I think it's called the
Oh, yeah.
Finks, right? The Finks
Yeah.
Mountain, right? We were going
Mm.
down that path, and we were going down. And I was telling like that, but yeah, I really miss seeing more Mexicans or seeing people of color, like that, and or not, see more
We
folks,
said something, yeah, we said something like that, and then we're like, "What is that? What we here?" But like, we were going down, and they were coming up,
Oh yeah,
and these homies were struggling. They were struggling, you
yeah.
know.
And we stopped and we talked to them. Like, one of them was from Long Beach. They're from Long
Yeah,
Beach, from the OC. They're like from the area. And then we were looking at their gear, and and once you think about it, you're like, man, like, they one of them was wearing like Nike like tennies, you know what I'm saying? Other cat was wearing like they had like, we were like, I was looking at the gear, we were both like, yo, they got a water filter. Do they have these things? Do they
Yeah.
have like these little things that are survival, right? Just to basically survive in our
yeah,
areas, right? And but it was really nice talking to them. They really brightened up my spirit, and I was like,
yeah,
and they did the trip last minute. They were just like they
yeah,
went out there. They went out there with their families. Remember, they went out there with their
yeah.
families, and they hiked in and
They
they
were like,
camped out there
they
with
went
their
with their
families.
families one time, and then they were like, solo hombres, for this trip. But it did lift up our spirits for sure. Like seeing them was like,
Hmm.
I don't know, it just felt good. It was like, all right, like we're doing this shit, we're all doing this shit. Like let's be out here more. We could do this because it's like, again, it goes back to like it's really healing, and you really
Hmm.
learn about yourself. You really become more aware of
Yeah,
the kind of person you are and the kind of person you want to be.
Yeah, I think they were probably feeling that way too. If they were struggling up the mountain, they were like, "Oh snap!"
Yeah,
but that was their first day, right? And
yeah.
there was a funny story because when they just went to the ranger station, but they started. Where did they start? They started in
They started like off because we went through the 395,
Hmm.
and then what's that? I forgot the name of the Onion Valley. We started in
Curse,
Onion Valley.
yeah,
They
Curse Each
start,
Pass or something.
yeah, we started Onion Valley through Kearsarge Pass,
Yeah.
and so we started on the east side, and they started on the west entrance to the park. So ours was an extra like 10 miles, you know, but they started through like the place we originally wanted to start through, but then it was kind of hard to get permits supposedly to reserve them. You had to show up in the morning, that's what they did, and they got it. But they got kind of the harder way to do it. They got pretty much like uphill for 3 days, and then you come downhill. Some people prefer that,
Hmm.
but we did like we went up, and then we kind of went down, and then up, and then down, and then up.
Yeah, so and I think that going to your question is just like if people are starting off is I think it's just doing it, right? I think
Hmm.
that to me is the best thing. The best thing you could do is having like just go out there and do it and learn, right? Because that's kind of like how I feel like we did it. We just went out there, we learned, we just had a lot of stuff, and then little by little you started learning kind of how to adapt to those things, and it just really sucks because I think that to me it's more like these things just really take time to invest in these things, right? It's going to be like
Hmm.
an investment on your health, on your life, but and it kind of sucks because it sounds like not that, yeah, I kind of feel some guilty in some days, because you recognize you have the privilege to get some of these things, and
Hmm.
I think that it is true that the lighter the things are, the more expensive they are, right?
Right.
Like there's certain things that I've kind of like got that I was like, man, I've never spent so much money on a certain item like this, you know what I'm saying? But I know at the end of the run, it's definitely worth it was worth every penny of it, you know what I'm saying? Like when
Hmm.
going out there. So to me, it's like if people are starting to get into it, right? Just kind of to your question would be more like just to kind of pick a spot, go do it, and don't be. I was afraid, right? The first night that we were out there, kind of like taking our own food for 3 days when we did that training. I was
Hmm.
like, man, we're gonna see a bear out here. I was like getting all scared. I was like, damn, I don't want to see a bear. Then you had the bear canister, and you see
Oh
all the
yeah,
videos on YouTube. And I was just like, man, I don't want to see a bear. I don't want to see a bear. And
we saw a
guess
lot of
what?
we saw a lot of
And
fucking
guess
bears.
what?
Yeah, those, yeah, sleepless nights, fucking bears right by our tents and shit. Like I don't know, man, but
Oh, I think I remember that story.
yeah, there was some nights. There was some. We would wake up some days all fucked up, like all grumpy because we didn't sleep. It was like a bear right there, you know.
Oh no.
And then we gotta hike like 12 miles. So, but like pretty much we learned a lot of lessons. Like
Hmm.
don't cook where you sleep.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
this is gonna attract bears.
Uh,
Um,
have you done the thing where you like try to like hang your food in like the trees so bears can't get to it if you're still kind of sleeping nearby? I've
nah, I
seen
just
people
think the
do
bear
that.
canister.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't think they let you. You need a bear. Where we go, you need a bear canister.
Mm. And
Even the homies that we met too, yeah, like they had to rent one right there.
what's a bent cast
Bear
bear?
cam.
Yeah. Well, what is that? It's like
It's
a.
it's just like
Hold on, I got one
this.
right here.
It's like a bear vault. Yeah, show 'em.
It's a.
A bear vault where you put your food in and then you like put it like 20 yards away from where you sleep. Oh, there you go. That with a lid
Oh,
on,
okay.
and the bears can't get in there.
Oh,
But
wow.
it's inconvenient to carry because it's kind of bulky and it kind of messes your backpack vibe up.
Mm-hmm.
But you could use it as a little chair. I use it for a lot of things. I wash my clothes in there.
It's a little dual
I
purpose.
did, yeah, dual purpose, man.
Put all my dry goods when I'm not hiking.
Yeah, yeah.
That's funny. You did use it for that.
I use it for a lot of things. Um,
So, um, that being said, n- hopefully the pandemic will be over soon. What are some future plans you have? I'm sure that there's a lot of different countries y'all want to backpack to. Um, um, Trails in the U.S. like the PCT. There's the Appalachian Trail. That's like another long haul on the East Coast. What would be your first place you would like to travel to?
I kind of want to. I mean, I'm taking classes right now. I'm trying to finish up these courses, so I kind of feel like I don't have time to do a lot of this,
Mhm.
but I want to kind of just do local hikes in LA. I want to get back into doing that
Mhm.
consistently, and I want to do kind of like just the big ones around here.
Mhm.
But I think what's on my bucket list, I want to do at least part of the JMT,
Mhm.
maybe like 110 miles of the John Muir Trail. So like it's total 220 miles from Yosemite to Mount Whitney.
Mhm.
But I think I just want to do like do half of it, and then maybe do that. So I'm aiming for next summer.
Next
If you
summer,
guys are down, what's up? If you guys are down, let's go.
that'd be pretty awesome.
I'm in there. Nah, but kind of like what I was thinking too. It is like how like they have a lot of like this gang language, like the GMT, the PCT, like all these different acronyms for all these things, right?
Uh,
But I think that the JMT would be interesting, or hopefully they rename it and we'll be climbing something else, right? Like
Yeah.
kind of like they
Yeah.
rename that trail and call it something different. But I was thinking about that one, and the other one I was thinking about that we flirted with the idea of doing the LA and the Angeles Crest Forest, starting where it starts off at the
oh
15
yeah,
and where
Mhm.
it ends up at Vasquez Rocks. So it's kind of like it was like 80 plus miles, whatever.
it's like 100
And kind of
miles too.
it's
Yeah,
kind of doing that route too of the PCT. That'd be kind of cool to see something local
yeah,
here in LA. Doesn't
yeah,
go
for
through
sure.
all of that. That'd be kind
Yeah.
of dope.
Yeah. That is closer to LA. You're going through the San Gabriel Mountains, right? To some
Yeah.
at least part of it.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, you are going through San Gabriel for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you end up over there in Vasquez Rocks.
Out in Lancaster, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that'd be
So
dope too. That's 100. Yeah, it's 110 right there.
That'd be kind of cool.
100 miles.
John Muir Trail next year. I don't know. I haven't gone backpacking yet, actually. So this is actually
Okay.
some good information because one of these days, park my car in Chantry and just do like 2 or 3 days, just going through from camp to camp. Um, that would be a challenge. I would like to try that one day. Is that an open invite, by the way?
Open invite, man.
John Muir Trail. All right,
John Muir Trail, or yeah, even LA Forest.
the
Let's
LA.
try the LA Forest. Let's do 50 miles in LA Forest, 30 miles.
From San
Try to test
Bernardino
these
all the
out.
way to Lancaster.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I think we got a good hour in. I don't know what else to add. Do y'all want to plug any social media before we wrap things up here? For at the end of this podcast, where people can follow you if you're
Um, I,
doing more hikes.
Yeah, we'll start it up, and there's definitely some cool people that to follow, right? Like there's like we have a homie named Remy, and he puts a lot of different places to go to. That's kind of cool. He got a lot of cool information. I feel
Hmm.
there's a bunch of people to follow, right? That I follow on social media that do some cool things, you know.
Yeah,
But
plug them.
definitely, there's more folks needed, and hopefully I'll send you those links and you can plug them up later. You know, I don't have them right now, but you can plug them up later.
I'll definitely put them
Yeah, I
in
mean, if
the
people,
chat. Yeah. Oh, not chat. The
yeah,
description.
people, yeah, if people have questions, I'm on Instagram, edflow656.
Hmm.
Right there on my screen popped up. So
I wonder if it's still in the
I think that's
recording. I
it.
don't think so.
I think that's it.
All right. Well, thank you for being my first kind of panel guest. I hope you enjoy this podcast. Until then, just like and subscribe, y'all. All right.